Hello and welcome back to N2 the Chatterverse, where two gents share their 2 cents on pop media. I am Victor Dandridge, the hardest working man in comics.
And I'm Bill, and I think Kentucky has an armadillo problem.
Ooh, an armadillo problem.
Or maybe they don't have it so much by what I saw on the side of the road driving through Kentucky.
How many armadillos did you see?
A lot going and a lot coming back.
Were they living?
Oh, they were not living.
Okay.
They were definitely not living.
Okay. Wow. I can't say I've ever seen an armadillo in real life. So I just haven't gone through Kentucky.
I haven't seen a live one. How's that?
Oh, that's so dark. That's so dark. And considering the nature of this episode, that makes it even worse.
Yeah, that was probably bad timing on my part, but oh well.
Oh my God. So for this episode, we are celebrating the life and work of one Mr. Peter David, a phenomenal comic book writer, has been a staple of comics my entire time of reading them. And he just recently passed away. And I think he is one of those writers that deserves a lot of credit that he doesn't actually get. You know what I mean? And so I think us taking his time to talk about him and his work and some of the projects that he's done that's meant so much to us is worthwhile. So you said that he's one of your favorite writers.
Yes.
That's awesome. When did you first get introduced to Peter?
I want to say it was his Hulk run.
Okay. Okay.
Just before Professor Hulk.
Okay.
So it was Joe Fixit, I think. Mr. Fixit.
Huge run. I'm gonna say something crazy. Outside of Stan himself, I don't know that there's another writer that's had as big of an impact on the Hulk as Peter David.
You'd be hard pressed.
Yeah. Because we're talking the Professor Hulk, Mr. Fixit. What's the Future Imperfect? What did he call himself? The older Hulk.
I can't remember.
Oh my God! I just saw his name as we were scrolling through the thing. Maestro. That's him. He did all of that.
Yeah.
So that's a huge run. Absolutely incredible. And that's not to dismiss Planet Hulk. I think Greg Pak did that, or World War Hulk. But I think in terms of defining attributes of the Hulk that people just understand, it as part of pop culture, they get it.
Yeah.
I think Peter David's is pretty heavy. It's amazing. Professor Hulk is huge, especially considering the MCU ramifications of him. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Actually. For me, it was X Factor. I was coming in early 90s, and his work on X Factor when they relaunched the team, and it was Havoc, Polaris, Wolfsbane, Strong Guy, Multiple Man. Big shout out to Larry Stroman, who was the artist on it. And that's how I found it first, was because I had found Larry Stroman's work with Todd Johnson called Tribe, and went and found more Larry Stroman work and saw his run on X Factor. And I'm like, oh my God, I love this. And Peter David, man, he nailed X Factor in a really cool way, especially once Larry was on there for a bit, and then Joe Quesada comes on, and their work together was fantastic. There's this one particular issue where the team is basically being psychologically evaluated, and you find out how or why Quicksilver is such a jerk to everybody. And it's because everyone is so slow to him, and it's annoying. And he's like, I'm trying to be as patient as I possibly can, but when people talk to me, it's like waiting for paint to dry, and I can't stand it. And it didn't make people like Quicksilver more, but it was oh, that's an interesting idea.
I mean, at least you can understand it,
right?
And that'll make you a little bit more tolerable of him being a little bit more tolerable of you. But still,
but you're still a jerk.
Yeah,
it's your dad. It's your dad. I know.
If you're still a jerk, you're a jerk.
You are still a jerk. But I think the thing that I loved the most was you go through this whole issue where it's all the characters kind of doing this first person point of view where they're talking to someone about these evaluations, and at the end you realize that it's Doc Samson, and you're like, oh, that's dope. I like the way that you tied that in, where you have this superhero psychologist who is, taking all this information from them and just kind of okay, yeah, no, I'll make these reports and it's cool, I got you. But it was such a great way to kind of get everybody's character down for anyone that was new. Yeah. And it was fun. I absolutely loved it. Did you ever meet him?
No, not introduced,
okay.
But I think you were talking to him one day.
I definitely was.
Yeah. But I mean, by then I'd been at, I haven't read anything from him forever, and I probably would have been like, yeah, I love your work on the Hulk, especially. There was actually an issue that he did with a character that was called Infinity.
Okay, yeah.
And everything she did turned out to be wrong, and they took the Infinity and made it Crazy 8, and she. In everybody else's eyes was a villain when she was just like, I'm just trying to do everything right, and just mistakes happen.
Accidents. Oops.
And that was a filler issue because the artist at the time was so slow getting stuff out.
Wow.
And I think Chris Claremont did stuff like that as well. He had filler issues ready to go, so his run on Uncanny X-Men
would be unbroken.
Yeah.
Smart. This is very smart. I just saw a clip that said that it was Peter David who had the idea of Magneto pulling out Wolverine's skeleton. So during the Fatal Attractions line, they were doing the summit, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna put these pieces in place, and this is gonna happen." And Peter goes, "And finally, Magneto can pull out his damn skeleton like he should have done the whole time." And he starts laughing, and everyone's like, "Actually," and he's like, "No, I was just playing. And they're like, "No, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it."
Yeah, from a comic book standpoint, that works, but from a storytelling, I don't. No, that would be awful.
It ended up into a dark time. It did. Wolverine lost his nose for whatever reason.
Oh, that's when we found out that he actually had
bone claws,
yes. And that drove me up the wall.
They were there the whole time. You're like, what?
But I've got this comic book that says he's got bionic housing in there.
So where did that come from?
Yeah.
It's funny. Like I would have retconned it where he had them for so long that his body generated bone claws to account for it. Like it has healed him with these in place for so long, it accounted for it. That's what I would have said. Not that he always had it, but that's Monday morning quarterback looking back.
Yeah.
But I love the idea that he was joking and said something, and not only did it happen in the books, got referenced again multiple times throughout the live action stuff, and then in X-Men 97 they pulled that off. Spoilers if you haven't watched it. Shame on you if you haven't watched it. But yeah, that was absolutely awesome. I obviously met him. The first time I met him was Wizard World Las Vegas 2015, and we were table mates. And you talk about like absolutely insane. I geeked out. As cool as I'm supposed to be, no. Like, put me next to a comic creator that is significant and has made an impact on me. Oh, I geek out. It's so bad. So we're sitting next to each other, and I knew that I was going to be next to him. And so Ryan from Comic Town had asked if I would get some books signed. And so I took some books down and put them down to be signed. And he had a thing where, the first one or first two was free, and then he asked for a donation after the rest.
Okay.
And I put down like 4 or 5 books. So I definitely dropped like $20-$30 into his donation thing. And he's like, "No, you don't have to do that. You're my neighbor. It's fine." I'm like, No. These aren't for me. So this is right and proper. I'm going to do this. And he's like, "Well, let me do something for you." And he's like looking at my table, and he's like, "Let me read one of your books." And I'm like, "Are you serious right now?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I give him The Trouble with Love, and he reads it, and he's like, "This is fantastic." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Peter David likes my work." And he actually shouted it out. He was doing an interview. I think the site was US of N. I think it's like United States of Nerds or something like that. And he shouted out The Trouble with Love in his interview, talking about how he's super excited about the next generation of writers. And it was like, this guy, Victor, that's next to me. I'm like, and so that's why I absolutely adore Peter David.
And then he stole your work.
I wish, man. He could, oh my God, he could take it if he wanted to. I would absolutely let him. But that was also when I found out that he was a novelist. I didn't know that. I only knew him from comics, and so that's when I first found out about the novelist.
Well, did you ever read his Calm and Comic Book Reader, which is now Comic Book Resources? But I digress.
Oh, yes. I was like, wait, what was that called? Yes, but I digress.
Yeah.
Yes, it was good.
Yeah.
It's so insightful.
Well, he also wrote screenplays, because I think he did 2 screenplays for Babylon 5.
Okay.
Which he wrote. I only have the 3 books that he wrote, but apparently he wrote like 5 or 6 of those.
A bunch.
And it's the same with what was it, New Frontiers, Star Trek, and the Next Gen books that he wrote. He is actually the reason why I got actually back into reading a little bit
Really?
at the time. I just loved his work so much.
I get it.
And Sir Apropos of Nothing, which in one of the books, he does a little shout out to the Lord of the Rings.
Does he really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the most adult-themed way ever.
One ring to rule them all.
One ring, for sure.
That's dirty.
Yep.
I love it. But no, he was a great guy with a great voice. I think that's one of the things that is so like he's not defined, I think, by any type of writing. So like when you say Grant Morrison, their writing is like super bombastic and mind bending and psychedelic. Yeah. Peter's was just strong. Like you picked up a Peter David book and you know you were going to enjoy it.
Yeah, he tells a great story.
Yeah. And the amount of characters that he is responsible for is mind blowing. Like he had a run. Again, 2099, Spider-Man 2099. For everyone that likes Miguel O'Hara, like he's co-creator, and that's one of those things where you're like, wait, he did that too, and he did like
who was
so
the
much.
Artist on that? Do you remember?
Is it Rick Lombardi? Rick, I think maybe. Let's look that up because Rick Leonardi. Yes.
Yeah.
Bam. Like Geek's strong right now. But yeah, also a super nice dude. Very, very open about talking about the business. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another one of those pieces of the puzzle that's happened in light of Peter's passing. He was not in the greatest of shape for the last few years. He was, definitely a bit sick, financially not great. And it has re-sparked the conversation of kind of the responsibility that the comic industry and media offshoots have to those people that have created these products that so much is based off of now. And what's your take on that? Like just that conversational theme. What do you have?
Well, I think that I do believe that corporations should, financially help out. But I also realize that if you know what you're getting when you go into it, what are you doing?
Right. But like, what are you expecting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do? It's like if they're not going to put into, say, your 401k, do you have a 401k?
Right.
And it's kind of tricky in that sense. But these corporations make enough money off of this stuff
that it should be.
They should be compensated for it.
Yeah.
It would go back to John Byrne,
right?
And him doing a cover for was a Superman comic, and it ended up on the cover of Time magazine, but he did not get the money that he should have gotten for
Time magazine.
Time magazine. He just got his normal cover. He has every right to complain about that.
Yes. And so, here becomes an interesting, I don't want to say devil's advocate, because again, like you said, there comes a point where you do know what you're getting into, right? Like there's been enough conversation in the industry, I would say for the last 30 plus years, that anyone entering the industry now for sure should know that these companies have a very specific perspective about their ownership and their rights to the work that's done for them by you. Like it's just understood. But I would say, like, going back, there should be a place where you go up to 95. We acknowledge that we probably weren't the most gracious people to work for. And there's a lot of stuff that was created that we have banked on for years and years and years, and we really didn't take care of the number of people that we probably could have, like we should have, right? We treated it very much so like this was commodities, and you guys are commodities that work on our assets, and that's it. Now we have a little bit more, we'll say a compassionate mind frame that says, you know what, we probably should actually give back something to them.
Yeah.
But to that end, is there an issue where the state of the industry has dropped to a point where that actually is not as feasible as we think?
Well, I mean, maybe it should be tied in.
I can see that.
It's just like profit sharing. Like if there's no profit, there's no share.
No sharing. That's true. That's true. That's true. No, I definitely can see that, because I think in terms of the conflation of the idea is we see billion-dollar movie franchises,
Right.
but not billion-dollar comic book sales. Like, that's not the same. And the question then becomes, who do you hold responsible, right? Because, like, when you say, well, Marvel Disney has all this money, sure, Marvel Disney does.
Right.
But Marvel is not selling books like that. Like, it's not even comparable.
Well, let's go back to Iron Man.
Yeah.
All right. So Iron Man, for all intents and purposes, not even a B character.
Was not Q level.
So the movie comes out.
Right.
And the movie's a huge hit.
Mm-hmm.
Do comic book sales go up?
I don't think so. No.
Now, whose fault is that?
Ooh, that's a great question. Definitely, Marvel publisher.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now,
yes,
that's the umbrella.
yes,
What's under the umbrella?
right. All of the, like, toys, the comics, the part, all of it.
The writer, the
Yeah.
artist
Yeah.
on the comic book.
Yeah.
The writer, the artist on Avengers, if he's in the Avengers at the time, or
Right.
whatever other.
So who all gets something
Right.
from that?
But, are they doing anything to bring, like, oh, we've got this hot commodity. Now, granted, no one thought. No one
At
thought.
all. At all.
I didn't think Iron Man. I went into it, I'm like, this should be fun.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, wow, it's actually a
This
really
is
good
a
movie.
Really
I'm
good
going to watch
movie.
it again.
Yes. Surprisingly good.
Speaking of which,
Yes.
Superman apparently comes in at a 2:02 and will be very easy to watch again for 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Hey.
I have yet to see that be official,
Okay.
but apparently that's what's out there as opposed to the 220, which
Not
still-
impossible, but
no,
still.
yeah, it's not the
Yeah.
249
Right.
that Mission Impossible is.
We got to talk about that.
So, but knowing going into Avengers,
Yeah.
when you had technically Incredible Hulk,
Right.
2 Iron Mans,
Right.
and a Thor and a Captain America,
Mm-hmm.
which did okay, didn't do great.
Right.
You should have known, bringing everyone together,
Mm-hmm.
that something was going to happen.
Yes. Yes. And you bank on that.
Yeah.
Especially because if you think about the context of getting to Avengers was a process, a multi-year process. And if you were building up to be successful to that level, plan for it across the board.
Right. And I'm not in tune with the comic industry the way I used to be. So and I know they're doing their own little, like, one shots,
Mm-hmm.
the issue
the
0.
road to
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
But are they doing anything else?
No.
Did they do anything with the White Vision?
Right. Not at all. Not at all. I even went as far back to say Black Panther was one of the greatest media fails in comics because the movie did so well domestically, and you saw all these little kids running around Wakanda forever. But the context of the books that we had was Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is a high-level writer. Like, this is not a stab at his writing style,
Right.
but it was not geared towards encouraging kids to read this book. It had a lot of political intrigue into it. It was heavy. It was just too heavy for kids.
Well, and speaking of movies that were 2 hours and 2 minutes, that were James Gunn movies,
Okay.
Disney screwed up when it came to Baby Groot.
Agreed.
But
They fixed it.
they fixed it by Christmas.
Yes, they did. But again, Baby Groot should have been the thing
Right.
that you got
Right.
as you left the theater.
It's just like, if crypto is not a thing.
Come on.
And I think the crypto Funko Pop actually comes out a month before all the other ones. But if you're not doing the little things that you should be doing,
Yeah.
whose fault is that?
Yeah. And that becomes
And also, where are the guys pitching this stuff?
also true. Because that should be a job. Like,
Yeah.
literally you go, okay, what do we have? We see this. I see points of inclusion here, and here. How fast can we make this?
Right.
I want 100,000 units.
And I'm not saying that everyone's going to go out and spend $5 on, or whatever it is
Sure.
nowadays, on, Tony Stark origin story.
Right.
But someone's going to.
Someone would. And when we are in a place in the industry where, I hate to say it, but we still are holding on to the 8 million units of a single issue as a high point, which was 30 something, almost 40 years ago. Like was
that X-Men?
X-Men. Yeah.
Yeah. And why was that?
Like
was it four covers or was it five?
I think it's five. Covers. But the idea that this is pre-internet and now all of a sudden, like, to hit 1 million units is like mind breaking. Like no one would expect that. But we have these billion-dollar movie franchises. How do you not hit those people going to the theaters? Like that's your bread and butter right there. Just use that, hook it. I digress. So to that end, we recognize that the machine that is this big media platform is not necessarily perfect under any circumstance. No. So consequently, that doesn't necessarily give them the means to pay out like we would hope they would as consumers or conscientious consumers, whatever. It's not necessarily true that they could do that. Now, I even posed the question of, would it be an issue for any of the actors? Because again, when you go corporate, interest, that becomes harder to justify.
Right.
But if you go actors, right, it's individuals that are taking on a role. If they have done any studying or reading up on these things or whatever, to have any sort of knowledge of where this comes from, would it be inappropriate for them to do it or to be asked to do it, whether by fans or anybody else? And you had a really good point about this.
Well, I think it's inappropriate to ask.
Fair.
But also when actors, even directors, and I'm sure some screenwriters, when they're getting paid these huge amounts of money, it goes to their production company, which would make it easier to pay out. But I would think that SAG would have a big problem with you taking your money and going.
Well, I'm gonna give it to this.
Yeah. Well, what did they do?
Right. Because now it makes it difficult to justify their platform.
Yeah.
We're here to protect you as a craftsman.
Right. And then you don't know what kind of precedent that's
true.
Well, you paid Steve Ditko $20,000.
Right.
Well, I'm still alive, so I deserve 30.
Right.
That's maybe not something as crass as that.
Well, no, but
my take on Spider-Man, blah 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 blah.
This was here, and I saw this. I think that's another good point too. When you talk about someone like Peter David, who his portrayals of different characters have popped up in different movies, sometimes overlapping, do you put a cap on it? Do you say, well, now that we've got Professor Hulk, Ruffalo should pay this, but before that, he shouldn't touch any of it because none of that is Professor Hulk. Like that becomes very tricky in terms of trying to like delineate and fractionalize like what percentage of this characterization comes from this level of work, which is just crazy.
I think that if Peter David came up with the line, "I'm always angry," then they should be paying him.
I mean, that's such a
millions of dollars. That was a great line.
It was so good, so good. That's my secret, Cap. That's why, okay, I mean, it's not quite the subject, but that's literally why Avengers is one of my favorite, like top 3 of the MCU movies, because it was so impossible that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like that's the one where you go, like kids today were like, yeah, no, of course Avengers. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Right.
Impossible. We never thought that we would ever get to that.
Right.
No way. Let alone that Iron Man would be good. So yeah, Peter David, wonderful guy, man. He was fun. I can still hear his laugh. He had a good laugh. Funny story. I probably shouldn't tell this one, but I'm gonna tell anyway. He accidentally, I think, broke the toe of a moderator at a show in Raleigh. He was riding around on a scooter, and this moderator was behind him, and Peter needed to back up, and he didn't look behind him, and accidentally ran over the guy's foot. It was so funny. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Like the guy, like he tried to play it off like, "No, I'm fine." He ended up having to leave the show and found out his foot was broken. I think it was his toes. But yeah, that was hilarious because what ended up happening was because he had to go like get medical treatment. There was a panel that he was supposed to do that I ended up taking from him, and I didn't mean to. Obviously, it was like I was available, but then I became like really good friends with like the Italian artists from this art group, because I was the one who ended up doing their panel. Like, man, you're really good. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And it's like, were you the guy who was always supposed to do this panel? I'm like, no. They're like, what happened? It's like, Peter David ran over his foot. I didn't plan for it, I promise. But it was.
I didn't push him.
I swear, it wasn't me. It was Peter David. He did it. But yeah, he is such a cool guy. Very, very sweet man. And absolutely the industry is a little bit sadder not having him around. What I will say is this. Obviously, it is a lot to try to justify, ask, or even demand that corporations help, matriculate money down to, triculate money down to a creative like that. So what you guys can do is buy more of his stuff. Like, keep his legacy alive.
Yeah.
Buy his books. There's tons of them, and make sure that people know how amazing he was as a creative storyteller, novelist, comic book writer. Like, he had a voice that you should hear, and it's amazing. Definitely hit his Wikipedia up, because you can see all kinds of stuff. Like, find something that you like because it's there, and celebrate those creatives while you can, because you never know. So, yes. Anything else you want to add to that one?
Just go read a book.
There you go. Once again, I'm Victor Dandridge, the hardest working man in comics. This has been Into the Chatterverse.
And I'm Bill.
We'll see you next time.